Welcome to another episode of High Output AI, where Elliot and Tom discuss all the tools and techniques that make AI happen.
Podcast.
And we're back, episode 30, V2. Now with 100% more internet and new microphones.
Hell yeah. Well, one new microphone. Let's still get the same one. A good mic, eh?
Yeah. Not brought to you
Rode.
by Rode, even though it's sitting there in the screenshot, but maybe next time.
Yeah, 100% not sponsored still, but do hit us up if you got any cool shit you want us to show. It's got to be cool, though. We're real picky.
Very picky. Actually.
It's got to be good. Like, I don't want to sell, random mattress delivery nonsense or whatever.
I did just get a mattress delivered, though. It's pretty good. They
I
sent
mean,
me a cute little koala bear.
That's fine, but people don't listen to us for tips on bloody mattresses. Anyway, welcome to High Output Mattress Podcast, episode 30. Take two, because, we did have some cooked internets and technological issues last week when we tried to record. But we're going to be doing this episode today, and this will probably come out end of this coming week. But we're about to dive into a live stream right after this, so you may see these things out of order. But if you watch two back-to-back videos and wonder why we're wearing the same shirts, that's why. But anyway, let's get stuck in, man. What bevies do you have today? I had a Sprite, but I finished it while we were setting up.
I have a Cafetiere coffee. I'm back. I'm back in a place with my Cafetiere. This will be the background for a long, long time. In fact, I put a little plant in the background there. You might be able to see it, and I hope that it will flourish as the podcast flourishes.
Yes. Every subscriber we get, Tom will give it 1 week worth of water.
So if we get 1,000 subscribers in one day, I will kill the plant.
Oh, I just meant you'd queue up a week's worth of watering. I didn't think you'd water it all at once.
Okay.
But, anyway, enough of this nonsense.
Speaking of flourishing,
live stream.
speaking of flourishing, thank you all to all our new subscribers and listeners. Turns out we're taken off on the podcast platforms as well, not just YouTube anymore, which is great to see. So yeah, if you're out there, leave a review, leave a comment, do something like that. Let us know. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up onto the Discord. Do something. Let us know you're alive. Let us know how we're going.
Yes, absolutely. But you're not here for us to talk about ourselves. That's what the live streams are for. Hint, hint. Go and watch that too. That'll only be on YouTube. We'll save the podcast platforms for just the podcast. So pop on over to YouTube if you want to see that one. But let's dive into this week's news.
Yeah, let's do it. So a couple of weeks of news bundled up into 1 week here. So we're going to kick off with some lawsuits, which has started to come forward. So 3 artists have filed a lawsuit against Stability, Midjourney, and Deviant at the moment. And they allege that these organizations have infringed the rights of millions of artists by training their AI tools on 5 billion images scraped from the web without the consent of the original artists.
Yeah, I mean, it's more on this trend that we're seeing of, what is fair use. I think this is another case of we don't know how it's going to land, but from some digging that I did and some pretty pessimistic Hacker News comments, which are, always probably the case with Hacker News comments, there was a lot of talk that this is probably a patent troll or that's, caliber of lawyer just looking to make a quick buck on a class action as opposed to likely to materialize into anything meaningful. They're just taking the gamble. It's a pretty cut and dry case. Either it's going their way or it's not. And I think it's going to tie into a lot of this bigger movement. I'm sure they want this in the chamber if some law comes down that says fair use is no longer fair use anymore. This is one to roll out and scrape the dollars in. Yeah.
The other interesting thing is the second lawsuit that popped up in the last fortnight was Getty Images, which is a bit more chunky and big than 3 independent artists suing Stability. But Getty Images is also suing Stability now. And it's for unlawfully copying and processing millions of images protected by copyright to train its software. And Getty Images now commenced the legal proceedings in the High Court of Justice in London against the firm. Now, poor Stability, they're getting hit by these two. Nothing about OpenAI getting sued. And I wonder whether it's something to do with location or the size of the company, Stability being quite a bit smaller now compared to OpenAI.
Yeah, definitely. It is a strange one. You've got to wonder, surely Getty Images is thinking about their own generative AI. Like it's a funny thing to like turn around and sue this company and probably release their own tool next week.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm wondering whether it's something to do with a little bit of like opening up the books of stability in some way.
Yeah, that's true. That is interesting. I mean, depending on how they got all this data, there may be some allegations of like, violating terms and conditions and things like that. A lot of the courts have said, though, that if data is public, then it's yours for the taking. LinkedIn tried to fight this pretty hard back in the days, trying to get people to stop scraping LinkedIn. And that's why a lot of these websites, like even Twitter now, you can see a little bit of content, but then there's a login wall because then they can block accounts. A lot less stuff is just hanging out publicly on the internet these days. Yeah.
And something in the same vein that popped up this week as well is that now there's quite a lot of AI out there that has the power to remove watermarks. And so I think Getty and who are the other ones? Shutterstock are... We've already discussed that they're in a bit of issue, but I never actually thought about this removing the watermark, which is basically their protection. They're going to have to really change how they operate as companies at some point very quickly. As you said, I think the path forward for them is having their own generative service, and basically everything's behind a paywall. But yeah, these companies, if their only response to this is legal action and suing, I think we won't be talking about Getty Images in 5 years' time.
No, definitely. And I think if they are around, like the unfortunate thing I see out of all of these is that for a consumer, it's going to end up with a shittier experience. It's going to be much harder to use these things. I'm sure there'll be some perpetual license thing that you've got to do if you want to embed a Getty Images image on your website and all this. And then somebody will forget to pay their bills and old websites will stop working because they'll just have broken images. And I just think we'll end up with a shittier internet because of all this nonsense. And ultimately, consumers will be the ones that lose the most, not Stability, who's probably like, I've scraped this data, I really don't care at this point.
Yeah. So this was one of our backup predictions from the prediction episode of lawsuits, and it's already starting to happen. I think there's not too much we'll keep an eye on this, but I don't think there's too much surprise or news here in this. I think it'll become really interesting when someone like, let's call it Zillow or some kind of like ratings. Well, what's that restaurant rating one? When Open Table or something like starts suing ChatGPT because they cut them out of the process.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Like some might even say that like Zillow or it's not Zillow. What is the restaurant rating one? Shit. Anyway, whatever it is, they in themselves are a middleman, and how it's like the middleman is suing the next middleman because middlemen don't like being cut out of the equation. But at the end of the day, like the restaurant, people are using those services because it's conveniently all in one place. I would argue that anyone else repackaging that into a new convenient place is not really, it knocks out a middleman, but I don't know. I find that a tough one to understand, like how they really have any grounds to stand on. I get their business is being disrupted, but like if your product sucks, then you shouldn't win.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether these firms that are the middle actors in this will have to end up just becoming this kind of API data layer on the internet, and everyone interacts with them through some form of search service. Yeah,
100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of value in aggregating stuff, which, did you find out the name of these things? Wasn't there one called Zomato at one point?
Yeah, the only one that I could find was Zomato. And then I tried to I said restaurant rating restaurant rating Yelp. US, and it's Google Yelp. Auto-corrected me to near US. So I was like, I give up.
Yeah, I think we're thinking of Yelp.
Yeah, that's the one. It's close to Z.
It's like, there's a lot of value in aggregation and annotation of data. I mean, look at Wikipedia. There's probably nothing on Wikipedia that is like first-hand knowledge. It's all just aggregation. I can see the value in that. But at the same time, like, I think gone are the days where any of these review sites are high-quality journalistic reviews. It's just like, we scraped all these restaurant websites, threw them in a bucket, and then got users to write comments about them. I don't know. I don't have a lot of pity for Yelp if it does get smashed by something like ChatGPT or even just basic Google search, just throwing results up rather than linking into Yelp.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting year for the lawsuits coming out. A lot of money flowing into the space, so
good
there'll be
to be
something
a
happening.
lawyer.
Yeah. So, obviously, when we get to the deal book, we'll be talking about ChatGPT and OpenAI and the news there this week. But another little bit of news in the fortnight on ChatGPT was it's gone pro for the low price of $42 a month.
It's a weird number.
Yeah.
Very strange price point too, I reckon. $42 a month. So what do you get for that? Is there a lower tier, like a free tier, or is it you pay or you just don't get to use ChatGPT anymore?
There's now a paid tier and a free tier. Paid tier is you get to access it all of the time, and then free is you get put in the queue or get all your requests get put to the back, so it's nice and slow.
I mean, look, all things considered, that's probably fair enough. $42 a month is pretty steep, though. Like, I know this thing costs a lot to run, but that's a lot. I think you'd have to really be getting a lot of value out of this to pay $42 a month, or package it into some other product of your own that is somehow making $43 a month out of the benefit of ChatGPT.
To me, I think it's pretty, like, as an initial pricing thing, this is by no means, I think, OpenAI's only revenue stream for the rest of history. I think this is a pretty smart initial move, and the reason why I say that is, one, out of their, whatever they got, 3 million daily users, or whatever it was in the first week, if you put $1, or if you put a credit card in, that number would drop to 10% of what it was.
Oh, at least.
And so I think it's one of those things where it's a very binary decision for people where, like, they're either willing to pay or they're not. And so if they are willing to pay, you're better off charging them $42 a month rather than $1 a month.
Yeah, no, fair call. Fair call.
And as I said, this is not I think this is like literally just a holy shit, we're burning through money. Is there any way that we can stop burning through money? Okay, let's create a tiered system.
Yeah, definitely. And my gut says there's also a little in here, which is like, yeah, $42 a month might not even make them profitable, but it does prove to some potentially skeptical investors or journalists that there is a business model for this product.
Yeah.
Even if it's small, even if it needs time to ramp up, it's like this product still works when there's a price tag attached, which to date, I don't think they'd really been able to prove. And, you know, I think we can talk a little bit more about that when we get into the deal book. But I saw another one on this list, historical figures. Tell me about that. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, so, and this was going to be my next point, as well as where the $42 a month makes sense. If you're running a business on top of ChatGPT, which some people already are, there's one that's come out this week. It's kind of like a gimmicky, fun thing to play around with called historical figures, where you can have a chat with anyone from history. So you get to choose your person. We've kind of covered something similar like this on the past, but, you know, already people are trying to chat with Hitler, basically, is the news that came out of this.
What the hell is it with the internet and, like, just like the shortest path to Hitler? Like, it's fucking so weird to me.
It's like 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon was the game everyone played in the 90s, and now it's 3 degrees of ChatGPT conversation.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the Turing test is like how it's some fucking demonic version of the Turing test. Is like, how quickly can you persuade the AI to become Hitler?
Anyway, so it made the news there this week. And I'm sick of this, like, I didn't really want to bring this up because of... I nearly didn't bring this up today in the news because of, like, I'm sick of the, like, OpenAI ruins humanity by accidentally letting something through or something like that. But instead... but I did want to bring it up as an example of, on the back of this $42 a month, of how people can starting to create businesses on the top of this. And $42 a month there as a, like, input cost to your business isn't too extreme. Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess, folks, if it's in the show notes if you want to talk to any historic figures.
Please don't talk to Hitler.
Warlords for some reason. Yeah, exactly. Find someone more interesting. Ask Turing what he thinks about this. I'm sure you know he's got a profile on there.
Keeping on the track of this ChatGPT, OpenAI, Microsoft little family that's forming, Azure has now released something called OpenAI Service, which is basically access to DALL-E, GPT, and Codex I don't know what Codex is, via a UX interface directly on Azure. And you kind of just get in there and you can kind of do you can get whatever you want from these models. It's kind of accessing these models from a single place directly on top of the Azure services, which is kind of what we expected to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now been released this week, which once again ties OpenAI and Microsoft even closer.
Yeah, definitely. So Codex is what underpins Copilot.
Yeah, I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big code generation language model. As you say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think we called this pretty early that, if OpenAI is leaning heavily on the Microsoft, it's going to be as a capability show-off for Azure. And, this is probably step one of a bunch of initiatives, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I just I threw in another thing that I discovered in there as well as I was watching the intro video, which is you and I have this theory, and we can't wait to be proven right, that prompt engineering isn't going to be a thing. They've already got stuff to help you with prompts. Like, you're not going to be a prompt engineer. Don't pay for some Udemy course on prompt engineering, because the UX will figure it out within the next year.
Yeah, 100%. There was a good article I read this week. I'll dig it up and pop it in the show notes if I remember, about how chat is actually just like the worst user interface, the laziest user interface we could possibly come up with. Like, so many people spend so much time designing user interfaces and user experiences, and now everybody's just going nuts because of natural language and being able to have a discussion with the computer. But I feel like if you had to spend 15 minutes asking your computer to open the web browser and be like, oh, no, not Edge, I want Chrome, please, and all this sort of stuff, like, people get sick of that so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a relatively crude form of interface.
Oh, definitely. And I don't know. I think about this whole like, ChatGPT is going to be in Bing and Bing's going to be the search engine to go to. But if every search result is like a fucking recipe where it's like, let me tell you the origin story of buses in Queensland, and then 45 paragraphs of, and anyway, the 451 will come 11 minutes ago when I first started typing. Sorry, you've missed it. People get so annoyed.
Yeah. I've decided as well, one bit of feedback for ChatGPT is make it a bit more succinct. Takes a long time to get an answer from it.
Yeah, I know. And like in a world of like 280 character tweets and 15-second TikTok videos, I don't know if people want to read a bloody novella just to get the simple question that they asked answered. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of ChatGPT, Nerdwriter, who's a guy I love to follow on YouTube, did a little essay on ChatGPT and the impact of that, and the kind of theme of the talk was all about how writing is a way of forming your own thoughts, and the point of learning essays in high school English and university is to how to form your thoughts in a unique and original way, and his point is like the difference between authoring and editing. Editing is not using your own thoughts, and how it would be sad to lose a world where we don't learn how to write essays and we don't learn how to think, which is a little bit simplistic, but it's a lovely, well-produced video.
Yeah, no, that just made me think of, we should release a really dumb product, which is a daily journaling app that you just put a couple words in and then ChatGPT writes you a daily journal about how great your life is. Fuck. Just for people who like want to say they have a daily journaling habit but don't actually want to put the effort into doing journaling.
And you have a sliding scale of how threadball you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Please optimize this for Twitter, my own consumption, or showing off to my therapist. Anyway.
Yeah, what's the domain we're going to buy for that one?
ChatGPme. I don't know.
Love that.
Yeah.
Last bit of news before we move into the deal book is there's been a little bit of an application published for the AlphaFold algorithm. It's if you wade through the clickbait of which makes it sound like AlphaFold has cured liver cancer. What's basically happened is a team has put forward about 10 different drug candidates for liver carcinoma, a variation on liver cancer, and it's really interesting to see that they've managed to produce a candidate drug for this. But now comes all the real hard stuff of producing a drug. And as we've talked about previously on the show, like, this is not the bottleneck at the moment in drug discovery. The next, like, human trials all the way through to regulatory approval, which will take about a decade on average, is the slow part of the process. But why I wanted to bring this up and not just make this a talk about clickbait is that I'm just really interested to see what will happen for this drug candidate, because if you think about it, this is the first time a drug candidate has been thought of not by a human. And it would just be interesting to think of the different. Obviously, there's bias towards our human thinking because it's like its training and its training set is human created. But I'm just interested to see how a novel way of thinking about something what it could produce. I suspect that it's just going to run into the same constraints and issues that most human produced drug candidates do.
Yeah, definitely. But that can still be a positive outcome. I mean, phase 1 especially is just like, it's often very experimental, maybe in rats. Like, if we put this in humans, would it mutate them into zombies? Check. That kind of thing. So getting drugs through phase 1 in a much more effective way, I think, is a really excellent outcome, even if it turns out that, like, phase 2, phase 3 ultimately means that this drug is not as effective or, only mildly better than the alternative. I think where, to me, this will become really interesting, it's hard to find new drugs, even with tools like this, but can we optimize for secondary measures that mean that, okay, what if we took a drug, it doesn't have to be better, but what if it's 10 times easier to produce with the manufacturing equipment we have? Or, what if it doesn't need to be held at certain ridiculously low temperatures to be transported? Or any of these sort of secondary outcomes which make, I think, the productization and the actual manufacturing and delivery of these drugs much, much more effective, and hopefully drops the price and ultimately means consumers can get more good medicine and, without breaking the bank.
Yeah, I'm excited. If you're waiting around for some algorithm that will, like, take a drug all the way through discovery through to in human bodies as a part of production process within 2 weeks, that's not going to happen. But there is going to be algorithms that pop up that chip away, hopefully, a significant part of the timeline for these for this drug for this area of the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to see where it goes. But yeah, unfortunately, it'll probably be 10 years before we know the answer. But all the best to that team.
Or it could be 2 weeks if we created a zombie apocalypse.
That's true. Yeah,
imagine if that was the way that AI killed humanity, is by manufacturing drugs that got rid of us.
Maybe. I mean, they'd probably turn us into GPUs rather than get rid of us.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
HPUs. Alrighty, let's jump into the deal book. There's a couple that I want to burn through real quick before we talk about the news of the week, which is obviously OpenAI and Microsoft's confirmed investment now. But first one is McKinsey acquired Iguazio, Iguazio, which is an ML ops platform, and it helps, like, improve AI development time, and seems to be a place where companies can dump a bunch of data and it can give you some insights. Like, one of those, like, B2B websites that you go to and it's like, I don't know what you're doing, but you're claiming to improve my business through data. It seems to be the vibe of that business.
Yeah. I'm so skeptical about these platforms, man, to be honest. Like, I haven't trialed a couple of them before. It feels, look, no shade on McKinsey. It feels very, like, consulting-esque in that, like, hey, we'll swing by for, like, a 6-week stint. We'll run this software internally. It'll give you some flashy initial reports. It'll probably never improve from there or end up in production, but it'll look fucking sick in our PowerPoint presentation, and you'll think that we did a whole bunch of work. Peace out, bye.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I wanted to say about this was that one thing that we talked about last year was Google's kind of help with digital transformation and the amount of money that they'd earned through DeepMind, through consulting, both back to Google and other businesses to help them basically digitally transform the business. One thing about McKinsey is that a lot of its, like, probably a semi-significant amount of its revenue is based off, like, helping companies move into the digital world. Like digital transformations were a big thing when I was there 5 years ago, and I think they've changed the name, but there's still some version of that is still big. And I see this as a move that is them seeing the writing on the wall that to be able to help businesses through this, you need to be able to have deploy tools to the level of Google's standards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, look, obviously I'm being a bit of a dick. Like, I'm sure there is some stuff that will come out of this. I just think it's going to be like a low-hanging fruit detection algorithm as opposed to like long-lasting, you know, we run Commonwealth Bank and then we implemented Iguanodon or whatever it's called, and suddenly the bank was run by a benevolent AI.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Speaking of things that machine learning that we're skeptical of, another company called Edafon out of Germany, PropTech, has raised 12 million euros, and they're an AI-based cloud platform for building management. It basically just seems like they make a platform for predictive aircon.
Yeah. So do you? There was a company that did this, Building IQ, and our mutual friend, Mr. Zimmerman from Main Sequence Ventures, used to be. I can't remember what his role was there, but
was he founder?
Maybe founder or one of the C-suite employees. But they've been doing that for a long, long time.
Yeah,
I think there was some CSIRO tech involved. It's listed now, all that sort of stuff. Look, I get it. It's probably legit. Managing aircon probably does, swing the budget quite a bit. But it feels like probably we've pretty much solved this problem with like PID controllers and stuff. We don't need AI.
So my first job, like my first professional job, I'm a mechanical engineer by background. I worked for a company that did HVAC consulting.
Yeah.
And I remember they used to like pitch all this fancy stuff, like, you know, automated controls and, you know, smart buildings, I think it was called back then, rather than AI powered. And basically whenever they went to a building, they would always find like the pumps, which were one of the main sources of electricity consumption, were running full throttle all the time. But people got way too cold. And so the building manager walked downstairs and would, like, instead of adjusting things in a complicated way, would just shut the valve slightly manually. So there was this pump that was running full bore just into a shut valve, basically. And the, like, biggest impact that the company had at the time there was, like, they opened the valve fully and like turned the power of the pump down because now the valve was fully open and the pressure drop was less, so they saved like 40% of their electricity bill.
That is absolutely crazy, but I 100% believe it. And I'm really glad to know that AI in the cloud will now be slightly opening valves and turning down the pumps.
All right, and then the final thing this last fortnight that's happened as well is OpenAI has led a $23.5 million round into Mem.ai, the note-taking app that we've mentioned before, that we said we'd use, but we are yet to use.
Yes, well, yeah, we'll get around to it.
We'll get there. Get there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You reckon this is Microsoft is trying to be the underpinning of OpenAI, and now OpenAI is trying to be the underpinning of Mem? Just like invest to be used kind of thing?
I think there's a couple of things happening here, right? Where it's like Microsoft, from a shareholder point of view at the moment, probably can't just be making like random angel investments into small note-taking apps, but they can invest into big, large, established companies like OpenAI and then be like, oh yeah, just use money over here. And shareholders are less likely to look at that. That's a rounding error for Microsoft. It's a rounding error for Microsoft.
Oh yeah, I know, but it's not. Well, I guess these days it's a small round for an AI company, right?
Yeah, I'm being facetious. I know it's not an angel round, but you know, Microsoft making a $10 million company into a $10 million investment into a note-taking app is like something they can't really afford to do as a business, and their shareholders wouldn't be like, "What's happening over here?" That's one thing, and then the second thing as well, I think, is that. I think one thing that OpenAI really lacks is the UX layer, right? They've got these fantastic generative models, so I think it's a really great idea by them, because if they manage to like find something that has the UX that consumers really like, they can just turn their AI talents to it. And also as well, they're just basically investing in future use of their models, right? Like, what's mem.ai powered by? Probably some GPT variation, right?
I think also, like, depending on how people use the app, but if you use the app like we do to make show notes and you have a URL and then a bunch of notes underneath, that's probably not bad training data for future models as well.
Yeah. I wonder if you like wrote a book on it, who would it? No, I was going to say who owned the IP, but that's stupid.
Yeah. I'm sure they're going to use it. I'm sure somewhere deep in the terms and conditions, it's like, we'll use your data to train some models. Promise we won't steal your stuff.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of like note-taking AI, I've now got access to Notion's AI.
Ooh.
I haven't used it yet.
Oh.
We'll give it a go on the live stream.
Yeah, good.
Alrighty, let's get into it.
Yep.
We've been avoiding it. OpenAI, Microsoft. It's official. 10 billion big ones by Microsoft into OpenAI, taking their total up to somewhere around $12 million $12 billion of investment.
That's a lot of green ones.
Yep. It is the biggest investment by Microsoft ever, which blows my mind.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if they've done acquisitions bigger than that. Like, do they count?
No, the only one was the biggest to date was $5 billion into AT&T in '99. So, like, adjusted for inflation, it's probably technically bigger, but like, it is the biggest investment Microsoft has ever made. Full stop.
I mean, with some of the speculation that a big portion of this money is going to go right back to Azure, I guess you can use that as a discount. But man, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah. I just think it's crazy. Like, literally, as I was searching for this, something in this, like, the all-time biggest article on Hacker News is about AI winter is well and truly here from 2015. And here we are in 2023 with the biggest investment one of the biggest tech companies in the world has ever made is into AI. And they didn't even buy the company outright. Well,
yeah, exactly. I think they own like roughly half at the end of this.
Yeah.
Until it's paid back by that weird scheme.
Yeah, so there are no public details yet, other than it's like no one's. But people say it's $10 billion. They say it's over multiple years, which is fair. Like, which probably means two things. One is that like Microsoft is being cash conservative at the moment, and the second thing as well is that it means that there is probably Azure credits on that.
Yeah.
There is the preferential return where Microsoft seems to get about half of OpenAI's financial returns until its investment is repaid. And that repayment is a predetermined cap, which is the cap profit style business. After that point, once again, all of the shares we mentioned last week, I believe, all of the shares will revert to OpenAI, the foundation, which is the not-for-profit. And we can expect a lot more news, I think, over the coming year/2 years of OpenAI partnering with Copilot, with Bing, and just other Azure-based services. Azure-based services in Microsoft. So, yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Like, whatever comes out of this, I think it'll be cool. Hopefully some cool products, some cool demos, lots more stuff to play around with. I mean, we saw it coming. I think the whole world saw it coming. One thing I will say, though, it's like, goddamn, Sam Altman's a machine. Like, bar almost no one, that dude has done some absolutely phenomenal stuff. Just across, like early companies, his time at YC, time at OpenAI. Like, and it's interesting to me that they can raise $10 billion and he's still not like, reach that mega yacht douchebag face that so many others do when they hit this level of success.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems a little bit like an Elon Musk, but early SpaceX era.
Yeah.
Not Twitter era Elon.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, look, props to him for, doing his part and pulling all this together. It's pretty amazing. I mean, how many people can say they help facilitate or led a company to a $10 billion round.
Yeah. This has to be one of the biggest rounds in history, right?
Oh, you
Because
think so?
Well, Figma was the biggest acquisition in history recently, right? For like
I think it was
27
Adobe's biggest. I don't know if it was the biggest ever. I'm sure there's been some like weird mining company mergers or some nonsense that have been...
True, yeah. When BHP and Billiton merged, it was billions, but yeah. Anyway, we'll keep caveating. One of the biggest rounds in tech ever.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. 10 billies.
Billions. Yeah.
Crazy.
Also good on, I think it was Forbes, calling Sam Altman as one of the 100 most influential people like when he was like young 30s or like 30 or something.
Yeah, wow.
It was like 5 to 7 years ago they called him as one of the most influential people in the world.
Well,
Good call.
Living up to his name. That's amazing.
Well, mate, shall we move on to the deep dive for the episode?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's shift gears a little bit. This week's deep dive is DeepMind DeepDive, which Tom aptly named, and then I said, well, we should probably talk about other Google AI products. So it's the DeepMind DeepDive featuring Google, just so we get that nice spicy alliteration for the podcast title. But we've talked a lot about OpenAI. They've definitely hit the headlines over the last 6 months. So we wanted to jump in, have a look at what Google's doing, what DeepMind's doing, and I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but goddamn, they do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought this would be an interesting deep dive by going into DeepMind, and I thought like, there'll be a bit of stuff to talk about. We'll talk about some fun algorithms and stuff like that. But holy hell, like, as soon as you zoom out even more, there's just so much stuff, and I think a good place to start with this after this little preamble by us would be to give a little overview of what all of Google's AI capability, and I'll pass over you to do that. But we just think it's extra important to be talking about this at the moment as well. Originally, we wrote this because we wanted to like keep people excited about AI as Google and Microsoft and Facebook lay people off in the thousands, but we also just saw, as we've been discussing for the last 10 minutes, the biggest investment in AI history happen. So turns out everyone's still pretty excited about AI, so we don't need to caveat it with that anymore.
No, definitely. And, off the back of Google recently laying off a bunch of people and then caveating the layoffs with, we're going to do more in AI. Facebook getting that investor letter saying, stop wasting your time in the metaverse, do more in AI. Yep. And then, likewise, a bunch of layoffs there recently. I think, Google definitely, they're putting out the message that they're doubling down, but it's off a massive base. Just to get us started here, I looked through Google Research and DeepMind's publication pages. Now, these teams, like Google itself, has probably half a dozen to a dozen different groups doing AI, but these are the two big groups within the company. Between the two of them, since about the year 2000, some of it's a bit later, obviously, with DeepMind, but since about 2000 and with massive ramp up in the sort of 2000s and 10s to now, they've published like 10,000 papers, which is just like insane. That's like, what's that, 20 years, 10,000 papers? Like
500 a year, yeah.
500 a year. That's like 10
but we
a
also
week.
know, but also, like, we know that's not going to be normally distributed across the years. It's going to be, it's going to be 5,000 in the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So they put out so much stuff. And I think, we've seen a number of their different models last year. I went through here, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're in the show notes. But, between January last year and now, I've probably found like 24 different headline level models that they put out. Everything from, chinchilla, flamingo, lambda, which was briefly thought to be sentient. They're putting out a ton of stuff. Last year was definitely the large language model, across all different applications type publication fest. But there's so much going on within Google across language, across images, across video. And what I'd love to get to once we talk about this a bit more is it's actually coming out in the product as well, which I'm really excited about seeing some of this stuff land in front of consumers, and not in a way that's like, here's an AI you can talk to or play with. It's a core part of some really, use everyday type consumer facing products, which is the coolest part of all this to me.
Absolutely. And I think what my learning about DeepMind, and I suppose it probably translates to Google as well, is I just didn't find as much information, is that DeepMind seems to produce a model, and then within 2 years, there is a major product that is being used by not only Google, but outside parties as well, in real life application with real life benefit. And what I find super interesting about the current state of Google is 2022 is by far their biggest year in headline models, as you already said. So let's jump back a little bit in history for DeepMind first, and just talk about a few of those models that have resulted in real products. The first one that I came across was something called WaveNet, and it was their text to voice neural net. Now, it first developed in 2016, but by 2017 it was already providing all of the backbones for Google Assistant. And now it is a lot of backbone for a lot of any of the computer-generated voices across the internet. Cisco uses it, and even a company called PlayHT used it, which PlayHT did the voice for ChatGPT in Reid Hoffman's podcast episode. So, and they've now actually gone onto the second version of WaveNet called WaveRNN as well, and that is now, it's getting better and better. And imagining what happens as you start to include some of these like language model, like chinchilla overlaps and things like that, it's just going to be an amazing product, even more amazing product.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's something funny about that Chat GPT being voiced by a Google WaveNet product, is that like, I think this paints a good summary of how I've been thinking about these two after doing this deep dive, is that OpenAI is like the new hotness, and Google's products are just like, they're already stable and staples. It's like, okay, cool. We're going to test ChatGPT. It's a bit of a wild card. It's fun. We'll mess around with it. We need a text to voice. Okay, cool. We got an off the shelf one. Like, they've stopped being sexy, but they're everywhere. And I think that's a much, much stronger position to be in.
Yeah. And my kind of like change in this was that after our Tesla AI Day episode that we did back in November in 2022, I remember sitting there thinking, wow, Tesla could be the winner of AI in the next few years if Tesla could be the winner. And the reason why I was thinking that was just like the amount of data, the amount of like effort, and the amount of compute and like infrastructure they were putting behind it. I'm now sitting here going, and then OpenAI, obviously there's been a lot of news, and my kind of bet is that Google's number one, Tesla could be number two, and Microsoft and OpenAI could be number three in terms of AI powerhouses in the next 5 years. That's like how much this little deep dive of Google has changed my mind about what they're doing. Just continuing through these models, the AlphaGo series of models, holy hell. It's such an interesting thing. I would love to read an even more deep dive on this. But so AlphaGo has now gone on to produce AlphaGo Zero. AlphaGo, obviously the famous DeepMind algorithm that beat the the Go players, which is the kind of Chinese equivalent game of chess. And I didn't put a date here, but I believe it was 2016 that it started kicking off. And I remember it was like the first time that AI got some really, really big news as well. Not the first time in a while that AI algorithm hit the news headlines. But ever since then, they've gone on to produce AlphaGo Zero, and then Alpha Zero, which was the sequel to AlphaGo. And it was not only able to master Go, but it could do chess, shogi, and within 24 hours of training, it had achieved like superhuman levels of mastery. And after 3 days, it was able to beat the previous models, AlphaGo Zero. They then switched AlphaGo into AlphaStar, which was StarCraft, and like it was just like a top 5 professional player like within hours kind of thing. And within like the other thing that I found interesting was it as well is that it was trained on human interactions and watching videos. And so what it actually learnt to do was to mimic humans, and it applied about the same number of actions per minute as humans without any manual throttling of it to make it equivalent to humans. It just learnt, it went, oh, humans do this, so I'm going to do this. And so, like, obviously, if you want to make it better, there's a clear bottlenecking there of being like, no, do 10,000 actions per minute, not 240.
Yeah, 100%. Let me think of that real dumb meme. I don't know if you've seen it, which is like, man, gorillas know zero bodybuilding techniques, so we've probably never seen them at their full power. Yeah, 100%. You just unleash this thing.
Yeah, and so AlphaGo turned into like all these game and learning things, and it looked like a fun research project with some engineers having a nerd out on this. And then bang, here comes some products. mu0. It was an AI to master games in general without knowing the rules. But they use mu0 to optimally compress video across streaming and meeting within Google, and they reduce bitrate transfer by 7%, which is like, when you're thinking YouTube, a 7% reduction in bitrate is like data centers worth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was a time, and I'm sure it's still true, but the numbers are probably a bit different, but like, YouTube and Netflix were like 60 to 70% of the bandwidth of the internet, full stop.
Yep.
So yeah, 7% savings is just massive.
They've now gone out and created a new model on the back of this called Alpha Tensor, which we've actually talked about previously, which figured out how to like reduce the number of steps in matrix multiplication by 2 from a base of 47 or something from memory. But they've basically switched it to the human game of maths and asked it to figure out maths without knowing the rules.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's cool. I think there's so many cool examples here of them just like repurposing this general, I'm going to beat everybody else at it type model into all these cool applications. Like, I mean, AlphaFold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've stolen my thunder. And the next one that they turned it to was the game of human of proteins and how do you unfold proteins, which they created AlphaFold. And then the other one as well is the human game of coding, and called AlphaCode, which will obviously be the Copilot competitor at some point. That all came from the AlphaGo series of algorithms within DeepMind. That's one model within one department of Google, and they've managed to produce like real products out of it. And we haven't even seen what AlphaFold could do yet. When specifically like paired with other data sets and things like that. Like, you can just imagine like pharmaceutical companies and general biotech research pairing the AlphaFold under like the AlphaFold algorithm with their unique data set or unique insights. And Google being party to that, both as like a contributor, a partner, and also just like simply making money from it. Yeah,
definitely. There's so much stuff that could happen there. And it's crazy to think, well, I guess it makes sense when you think about it from a human learning perspective. It's like, games have a fixed set of rules. They have a good end state. There's a good way to track if you're doing well. It's a good base for building this sort of general learning capability. Yeah. And then being able to repurpose that for so many other things, I think makes a lot of sense.
And where this like idea came for the Google DeepMind DeepDive that we're doing today was actually, I was reading about their Deep Nash set of algorithms, which they've been using to solve games with a much more human element, play games with a much more human element, like Risk, and those board games where you like have to like basically stab each other in the back kind of thing. Or you can choose to stab each other in the back or cooperate, but at any point anyone can switch. They've created algorithms to deal with that side of humanity as well. And I was just interested in what they were doing. So now we're going to start seeing like, okay, they've been able to successfully create AI in a very rules-based environment. Now they're going to open it up to a much more, with many more degrees of freedom compared to this like game series. It'll be just interesting to see what happens there. And interestingly, that Deep Nash one, they did like these, we should also just do a deep dive on it. It's fascinating how they like trained it and constrained it during it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, games like poker and all this sort of stuff, they've really, like top tier poker and things like that, is just people memorizing sort of, Nash equilibrium, optimal game theory type models of how to play. And it makes a lot of sense that AI would be really, really good at that. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of them run simulations and memorize the outputs. This is just that times 1,000.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like, those are just the models that have been produced in the past that have like some of the models that have been produced in the past by DeepMind that have resulted in products. And then, as we said, this year, what a year they've released. They've gone Chinchilla, Flamingo, AlphaFold, Gato, Lambda, Deep Nash, Sparrow. What if each of those are going to go on, like, before we know it, those are all across different areas, from large language models all the way through to image generation. Where are we going to, and then just general learning as well, like, what products are those going to lead to? For example, like, AlphaGo led to a 7% reduction in bitrate transfer, like.
Yeah, and exactly.
And Google is big enough that it will find a use case for these models as well, which, unless OpenAI and Microsoft can tie themselves at the hip very, very well, they're less. I just don't believe they have this advantage that Google has, where they can develop these products for their own use. I think OpenAI and Microsoft might be a little too separate for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very specific set of tools I think that Microsoft could launch within an Office suite that makes sense, but Microsoft doesn't have its own phone brand anymore. Like, its browser is just Chrome with a different coat of paint on it. Windows, yeah, maybe you could squeeze some stuff in there, but I think Google has a lot more of the mind share of people compared to Microsoft at this point in terms of day-to-day interactions.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the DeepMind world as well. There's also, obviously, as well, lots of small contributions by DeepMind to, like, the Google Play recommendations. They've been, like, able to optimize a bunch of, like, data center stuff as well around cooling and like uptime and load sharing and things like that. They've done other things as well, like phone battery optimization, but like lots of small applications that I'm sure we cannot find that are hidden within Google.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, talking about the phones for a second, I did a bit of a search about what Google is advertising as AI-driven products within their latest batch of Pixel phones. So,
yeah, nice.
Yeah, they've got, as you said, battery optimization. They've got live captioning. So, if you're doing video or having a video call, it can do live captioning, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
In terms of the camera, so it's a lot focused around sort of camera in the current setup, but unblurring photos, the magic eraser tool. So basically, if you took a nice photo of you and, somebody that you don't hang out with anymore and you want to get them out of the photo, or there's just too many people in your background, you can erase that out and it'll smart fill in the gap that was there. The night photography tool uses a bunch of AI to sort of guess what's going on in the image and make those photos look a lot nicer. And all of that stuff is shipped and live and probably being used without anybody thinking about it all the time. I mean, I know Magic Eraser is like very much in their advertising and showing off, but things like Unblur and night photography, they have reached that we just set a new bar. Like, that just works now. Like, you just don't have blurry photos. You just don't worry about taking photos at nighttime. Like, we just solved that problem. Yeah,
as someone who's in the market for like a new recording camera, I'm wondering whether I have to spend thousands of dollars on a soft focus lens when AI will blur my background perfectly for me soon.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just diving into some more products, there's some rumors, and I/O this year, which we'll do a bit of coverage of, is usually when the big things get announced by Google, which I think is happening around May this year. But some rumors about some new products. There's a new image generation studio apparently on the cards, a Dream Studio competitor, which will likely sit within Google Drive, Google Docs for sort of image creation. And I mean, that seems pretty amazing on its own. I think a lot more people are going to like the accessibility of, I've got a Gmail account, I can play with this, rather than I got to sign up to some weird other thing. There's apparently some updates or some tests going around the shopping feature in Google about being able to try on clothes. So you'll boot up your webcam and it'll sort of superimpose clothing on top of you. I saw some years and years ago, I saw some demos of this and it kind of sucked. But if they can get this right, I think that'd be awesome. that sort of stuff I think can have a real impact, and people have fun with that, you know. Bunch of YouTube features, green screens, bunch of video summarization and video editing stuff that's coming to YouTube apparently, which I think will be cool, and people will use that all the time. Maker Suite, which sounds a little bit like that Iguanodon or whatever it was called product, which is for businesses to create their own in-house AI products, likely tacked on to sort of G Suite or those sort of business offerings to bring their data in-house, maybe pass through emails, pull things out of attachments in emails specific to that business. You can imagine receipts and things like that, which would be very, very cool. And talking back to Alpha Code, some new Android app development tools, which is sort of a combination between Google Colab, which is that Google Drive-based run a Jupyter notebook in your browser type setup, and AI code generation to make apps. So assistive coding, assistive design. And I think if they can get that right and give people not only a way to like build complex apps, but also just like ship little dumb apps to their friends and share that in a way that's as simple as sharing one of those Colab notebooks, I think that will just be honestly like a massive change. Like you think about the Apple and the Google ecosystem, and there's a pretty high bar to like getting an app on the App Store. Like, yeah, there's a lot of shit on there, but you can't just make a dumb little app and then send it to me and then I run it on my phone. But if they could change that and let people just like tweak and remix stuff and just like share it around with their mates and do, I'm sure there's all sorts of security restrictions on what it can do. But I think that could be a massive draw card to get a lot more people on the Android platform.
Yeah. So the kind of question that I have out of this, right, is like Google's Google because they made, everyone talks about search, but they've also made a series of bets and investments that have like just also paid off on the 1,000x mark. Mm. YouTube being a great example, right? What did they acquire that for? What, like $1 billion, and now it's probably makes massive. That every minute for them.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's no sign of any competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you be thinking or focusing, or if you were the magic leader of Google AI? And I'll kind of constrain it for you, and obviously feel free to like go outside these constraints. But let's say there's like consumer tools, right? Where there's for the everyday folk to interact with AI to help them in their work. There's the developer tools, so that's for developers to create AI and to create things. Or there's the infrastructure layer, right, where it's like to assist with the optimization of the internet and accessing things via the web. Where would you be going?
I would go, it's a pretty boring answer, but I'd go B2B. I'd try bring more people onto Google Apps and Gmail as a underpinning for their business, and do things like, hey, we're automatically going to pull all of the receipts out of your email and put them in a Google Sheets spreadsheet for you. So if you need to reconcile them, it's there, it's done. Because I think I know a lot of businesses that run their business on Gmail and Google Calendar, those businesses still very often have a Microsoft suite of products for office work. And I think if Google can change that and do that in a way which is like, we basically like, build this very specific AI for whatever the hell it is you do for your business, and integrate that very deeply into their existing product lines and get a bit of lock-in with that, I think that would be a big win and really set them up to compete with some of the other players. And that way as well, let's say you go to a Commonwealth Bank and you get them to flip. You start to build some of these small tools, and then you say, hey, we could do a bigger rollout with some Google Cloud level tools to really start to optimize the rest of your business and shift your business onto Google Cloud and tie a lot more of this stuff together. And I think that sort of invasive, we're going to be everywhere top to toe in your business, is probably the best chance they have for making money, because I think what we're going to find with ChatGPT and the others is that the general consumer's willingness to pay for AI as a gimmick is not going to be that high.
Yeah. I also think as well that like it's just would be very, very. I think if Google tries to compete with Microsoft head to head in this space, they'll probably come off second best. And the reason why is whatever Google produces, Microsoft will probably be able to copy and then they'll win through distribution, right? And it'll just be like really hard for Google to create a suite of tools that would compete with Microsoft Office plus Teams plus layering on all of this AI, this consumer-facing AI stuff. And so going head-to-head on Microsoft, I think they would lose on. And so, yeah, if I was Magic Overlord of Google, I would be focusing on either like something like Android, like something that is unique to them and can then channel into other products for them as well. Yeah, so as you said, something that would just like make the App Store explode would be fantastic, or things that would just like make the tools on Android phones just like way easier for developers to, and like kind of the no-brainer for developers to produce on, or something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'd be.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's also that, like, again, coming back to B2B, like a lot of companies using Chromebooks. If you could share just like business-specific apps without needing it to put on the App Store, or like, you know, if you could send out an app that was an app experience on the phone, but like, you know how like every event used to have an app and every restaurant used to have an app?
Yeah.
They don't need to be apps. They're like slightly better than websites.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do there. Tying all that together, just like do what Google does best and just like put stuff at your fingertips, whether it's knowledge through search or anything else. Just like get people the stuff they need really, really quickly.
Yeah. And frankly, for free.
Yeah.
And make money in a different way, whether that's by advertising or like, as you said, Google Cloud services.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, you can tie people in a whole bunch of different ways. And, you know, as we've seen time and time again, it's distribution that tends to win this battle. And free is probably one of the best forms of distribution. And, you know, I think there's other stuff as well. It's like, you know, if you can save 7% on bandwidth and then put that into Google Chrome, what does that do for like everyone kind of thing?
Yeah, the other version of this as well is right. It's like just create the boring AI for the internet. Like, I need a text to speech generator.
Yeah.
Like the Wave RNNs of the world.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, gimmicky consumer-facing products are a good way to make a buck this year, but to make a buck over the next 50 years, that sort of, real boring infrastructure level stuff, like, you know, where do we lay fiber networks and all this sort of stuff to, you know, optimize the internet full stop? That's the kind of stuff I think Google should be setting their mind to, because I think, Google has a strong chance of being here in 50 years and they don't need to make a quick buck.
Yeah. Well, Elliot and Tom, long Google, if you hadn't got that TLDR.
Yeah. Despite not owning any shares and running almost exclusively on Apple products. Long Google.
Well, mate, I think we'll call it there. I don't have too much more to add on DeepMind without beating the dead horse here. But, anything else to add? Anything to plug this week?
No, nothing to plug except the YouTube channel. If you are listening to this on another platform, Tom and I are about to, probably in the next 5 minutes, do a live stream, just talking shit, very unstructured type episode, which we'll keep on YouTube and, you know, not anywhere else just because of the nature of it. So do tune in. Come and subscribe. As always, share with a friend, get in touch with us, let us know we're doing a good job. We crave that validation as much as AlphaGo does. And, that's all from me. What about you?
Nah, nothing to plug other than say thank you, all you lovely people, for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode. If you're liking this content, make sure you subscribe and like so we keep on going. And if you have any questions, make sure you hit us up on Twitter, join our Discord, or leave them in the comments below. Thanks again.